If I could summarize it into one sentence, I would say it wasn't me, it was Jesus. I couldn't have done any of this if it wouldn't have been for him. And I can't sit here and not give him all the credit, because it's not my story, it's his, and he continues to write it and I continue to share it because that's what I'm called to do.
I love it so much. Just yeah. I love it.
Like that's the summary of it. If you were to ask me and I were to summarize it, that's what I would say. And then just kind of like what that journey looked like. You just have to really, really know what you want and not stop at anything until you have it. But your want has to serve more than just you. So if you want the right thing and you don't stop until you get it, you will serve so many people in the process, but then you will also feel very fulfilled because it's what you're called to do.
There are times when life just brings you down, 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 down to the ground. And it's hard when you can't see the light, 'cause things don't look so bright. So now it's time to reframe and retrain your brain. It's time to look for the good. You know that you should. Why don't you join me? 'Cause I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. Oh, oh, oh. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine. I'm seeking sunshine.
I'm Karaleigh Garrison, a singer-songwriter, motivational speaker, and your host of the Seeking Sunshine podcast, where we find the positive in the trials of life. I created this podcast because I believe really deeply that we can learn from one another's stories and experiences. I'm willing to bet that just about all of us have been through some really, really tough things. And not only is it therapeutic for us to be able to talk about these darkest times in our lives, but the lessons that we've learned and the resilience we've shown can help everyone around us weather their own storms from higher ground. On the Seeking Sunshine podcast, we don't shy away from difficulty and trauma, but we always look for the sunshine in it. It's my personal belief that there are blessings in every trial and trials in every blessing. I use this Seeking Sunshine mantra every single day to change my perspective when things start going wrong and getting frustrating, which they often do because I have 3 kids with special needs. And I can tell you that it has transformed my life. And I hope, and that's the whole point of this podcast, that it can transform your life too. Hey guys, I just want to take a second to let you know that my debut album, which is also called Seeking Sunshine, is coming out on May 23rd. This has been like a year and a half in the making, and my whole heart and soul has been poured into this work. It's jazzy and theatrical and a little bit pop, and it explores some really complex emotions. These songs they're fun and they're catchy, but when you really listen to the lyrics, they're gonna make you think, and they're gonna help you feel emotions that maybe you haven't been letting yourself feel. The goal of the whole album and of this whole thing is to help you really understand your innate worth, to help you find peace in the chaos of life, and then to witness suffering with hope and compassion. I've been through a lot, and I hope that as you listen to this album, that you can feel that you can see your own struggles in these songs and be able to work through everything you've been through and come out hopeful on the other side. So anyways, I have a really great exclusive offer for anybody who pre-orders the album. You're going to get access to printable lyric posters for each of the songs on the album when it comes out. I'm so excited for this offer, you guys. They're amazing. They are beautiful, inspirational visuals that will lift your spirit every time you see them. And I highly encourage you to do this pre-order offer so that you can look at these gorgeous posters while you're listening to the album, because it's going to help deepen the experience for you so much. So if you want to pre-order this album, you can do that now at KaraleighGarrison.com/pre-order. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Seeking Sunshine podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you are having such an amazing week. It is spring, it is beautiful, we are diving right into summer, and I don't know, for me here in Utah, we are finally getting some warmer temperatures. I hope that you're enjoying the beauty that is all around you, because for us here, it is just starting to warm up and get really gorgeous outside, and we're anticipating such a beautiful summer. It's just lovely out there. It's such a beautiful time of year, so I hope you're enjoying it. Hopefully you can't hear it too much, but I do have a cold, so my voice is a little bit scratchy right now, but that's all right. I'm super excited to introduce the incredible guest that we have today. Her name is Rebekah Hope, and as I described her in the show notes, she's totally unstoppable. She's actually from an Amish community, and she left at 17, and she's so incredible. Her story is amazing. I'm so excited for you to hear this interview. So let me introduce her real quick. She is an author, a speaker, and a relationship coach, and her name is Rebekah Hope. She's from a small Amish community in northern Michigan, and she experienced a lot of abuse as a child, and she felt really trapped in this environment that nearly took her life. And then she chose to leave the Amish life behind at 17, which, I don't know, that sounds like such a difficult thing to me, because 17 is so young and so vulnerable, and to have grown up in such a different kind of environment and have no idea what life was outside of that just sounds so scary. So she left everything and everyone she knew behind, traveled across the country by herself with only the clothes on her back and a few dollars in her pocket. And then she experienced major culture shock, and then experienced life in some really unimaginable ways. She found a new meaning to life and vowed to herself and to the next generation that she would use her story to help as many people as possible. And she really has done that. Her story is so inspiring. She's written a book called Beyond the Brokenness, and she's become a certified life coach specializing in personal development to help people through the most challenging parts of their lives. She coaches people from personal experiences as well as from professional education in psychology and mental health. And Rebekah strongly believes that there is hope for all, and she's bringing that hope to anyone who is willing to stop and hear her voice. Oh my gosh, you guys, this story is amazing. She's so incredible, and her motto is, do what you can with what you have from where you are, because there is hope for all. So I'm going to stop talking now, because Rebekah's words are amazing, and this interview is incredible. So welcome to Rebekah. Hi, Rebekah. Welcome to the Seeking Sunshine podcast.
Hi, yeah. Thank you for having me. So good to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to hear your story. It's a wild one.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. I would love to hear, I was reading your bio, so I know, and the audience doesn't know yet, but I want to hear what it was like growing up Amish. That's what I'm
Yeah.
so
Well, I
curious
should
about.
ask how many days you have. No, jokingly, because I could talk all day, and there's a lot that could be said that cannot be summarized in 1 hour, but I will do my best. Growing up Amish, it was different. The best way that I like to describe it to people who have no idea how the Amish live is it's very similar to if you ever heard of Laura Ingalls, like a pioneer type of life.
Yeah.
The Amish specifically that I grew up in had no electricity and a lot of just things you couldn't have, no modernized stuff, and plowing the fields with horses kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, and I suppose growing up in that you were just used to it. This was just life, right?
Yeah, and when people ask me what it was like, I'm like, well, it's all I knew. So how to answer that question, it's like, if it's all you knew, then what else you don't know there's anything else, right? So it's
Yeah,
just
of course.
when you're used to something, you're just adapted as the norm. Yeah.
Well, so then I guess the big question, and there's definitely more I want to dive into with that whole story, but like what comes up then is like it's then the difference. It's when you leave that and you go, oh my gosh, the world is not like how I grew up. The world is totally different.
So different. Yes. I left when I was 17 years old, and I've had people ask me like, would you help me leave the Amish? And would you recommend, can you help me? And I'm like, I honestly wouldn't recommend anybody to leave at 17 unless it's to escape some form of abuse where they just can't be in the home. Simply because me personally, I was not equipped to live in a culture that I knew nothing about. And the Amish culture really just does not equip you to live anything other than Amish. So you got to imagine 17 years old, I was lost, I was broken, I was, you name it, I was the rebellious teenager who sought for love in all the wrong places. And when I left, I knew nothing about this whole American culture, if you will. And suddenly I had to adapt and I had to survive in it. And I had nothing to equip me for it. Yeah.
So I do want to dive into that so much more, but before we skip over everything that happened, let's dive in a little bit to the abuse you experienced in your culture and what how you got through that, really, like how you kept going when you didn't know much else, but you knew that that was not okay.
Right. So it took me a long time to even admit that I was abused because I didn't, as you said, it was normal for me. I didn't know it was abuse. And for me, like it was a lot of physical, mental, and emotional abuse for me. I was bullied my entire, I got to say, my entire childhood. It was at home and in school, in public, wherever you went. I just somehow never fit in. I felt like I was never good enough to be anybody's friend, if you will. And I feel like a lot of that stemmed from my life at home, where home was not a safe place for me. I couldn't come home and I couldn't, you know, unload or vent or seek how to survive outside of the home because I was barely surviving in the home. And by the time I was like 8 years old, I was a bulimia. I had suicidal ideations. I daily sought how I could just end my life because I was fully convinced that my birth was a mistake and my life was a mistake, and I knew no other way than to end it. And that kind of, you got to imagine, that was at 8 years old already. Well, when I was 11, I had a little brother that came into the world that was literally my saving grace, and he was my sunshine. I was seeking sunshine, and he was my sunshine, and that helped me to I had found hope again in the sense of something to live for other than myself. And it was, I think he was about 5 years old then when I left, and during that time he was the only reason I stayed, really. Otherwise, like, I would have been gone a long time before that.
So were you an only
And
child before he was born?
oh, no, 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 I have three older sisters. There are
Okay.
eight children in
You
my
were the
family.
youngest. No,
I
you
was
weren't. You
actually
were
a
kind of
middle
in the
child. I
middle.
was the
Okay.
rebel.
Okay, so it was really
Yes,
something
no.
about him in particular, not just having a
Yeah,
sibling. Okay.
it was. I was 11, and he was the only one that I felt like looked like me, acted like me, and wanted to do everything I did. Like, he was my mini me, except he was blonde hair and blue eyes. But I mean, everybody said he looked like me, and I was like, finally, I have a sibling that looks like me. Because
Which helps you feel like you belong in your family. It's
yes,
so my husband's a twin and his twin doesn't even look like they should be siblings.
oh wow,
My husband's got brown skin and dark brown hair and black eyes, and his twin brother is white as can be, blonde, and they're twins. And so my husband, I've we've dived we have jumped into that pool of like not feeling like you belong in your own family just based
Mhm.
on like appearance, and how like that can just bind you to your family when you share those traits, and how it can be so difficult when you don't.
Yeah, I always question, like, why do I look more like my dad than everyone else? Like, I definitely favorite my dad, and a little bit darker, and all the others seem to favor after my mom, blonde hair, blue eye kind of thing. So it was different. It was a challenge, and but to me, again, it was normal. I didn't know there was another way, and that this was not normal, and that's why I was pushed to just feeling like the only solution to this is ending my life. That's really like the ultimate. Yeah.
Because you didn't belong, because you
Yeah.
said, I don't belong in this family, and I don't belong in this culture. I don't belong anywhere, so I should just not be here.
Yeah, it was just event after event that led me to believe and just confirm again and again that this is I don't belong here. I don't know where I belong, but I don't belong here. This is I didn't like it. I didn't feel like I belonged. Let's just yeah.
So
It
then
can be summarized as that.
Yeah, so then your brother was born, and that helped you, that was your sunshine, and that helped you have a reason to keep going. Were you like, at 11, I mean, you're kind of old enough to kind of a little bit be mothering him, and to be supporting him, and helping to raise him.
Oh yeah, I felt like I was his mother. I mean, obviously, by birth I wasn't, but I mean, I took care of him and it was just, I don't know, we had a bond that I didn't have with any of my other siblings. And it was also just a couple more years, and then I was done with school because in the Amish, they only have 8 years of schooling where I'm from. It's different because there are different sects of Amish. And so the Amish that I came from, they only allowed 8 years of education. So
Was
by
I
the
just
time
out of curiosity, was that different for girls and boys, or was
no,
it the
no, it was
same?
the same as boys and
Okay.
girls. It was just after you were done with the school, then the education continued at home, and that's where it then would look different for boys and girls. The boys were taught how to kind of, run a farm kind of thing, and then the girls were taught how to keep the household clean and how to
Yep.
run a household.
Mm-hmm. I bet, well, and we can dive into this more in a minute, but like I bet that educational difference was astoundingly obvious when you left.
Oh yeah, I was again, we also English was my second language. I didn't learn English until I went to school.
What
So it
was your
was
first
also
language?
so they call it Pennsylvania Dutch. It's a dialect of German. It can also be translated into Yiddish. Like if you use a translator, I I fully like I understand Yiddish. So I think Pennsylvania Dutch is the word they came up with because they wanted to make it their own. But it originated from German.
That's so interesting. And
Yeah.
German's a difficult language. Like compared to English, like they don't go together very well.
Yeah. So you can imagine when I wrote my book, I felt like I was, writing backwards. Like the sentences are so backwards.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I definitely need a lot of help with grammar on that.
Wow.
Mhm.
So continue on. So you finished school, you were helping raise your little brother, that really brought so much joy to your life when you kind of felt like you didn't have any. And then you decided to leave. What did that look like?
So when I decided to leave, if I were to pin it to one thing, is I, for some reason, thought that I could save my little brother from experiencing the types of abuse that I did. And when I saw that that was not going to happen, I couldn't. I was like, well, my only other option is to leave and then hopefully someday be able to help him as well. So I saw no point in staying because my only motive for staying suddenly vanished. And so
Well,
when I
and
was
I'm curious if you had any other examples around you of anyone else who had left, if that had ever been modeled for you, or if this was like a totally new thing.
at that time, it was almost unheard of in our community specifically. but there were a few who I had heard that left. I think I had a cousin who left and a couple other people, but nobody that I was close with that kind of showed me the ropes or told me this is what you do or don't do. I had actually tried leaving when I was 16. It was more or less a runaway, and then I was forced to go back home. And then when I was 17, and then by the time I was 17, I actually had a sister who left as well. And so I was in connection with her, and she helped me somewhat get started out here. But she had just left like 6 months prior to that. So she was still really new to this game as well and didn't know the game, didn't know how to handle certain things. Therefore, she wasn't able to help me.
Well, and
But
what it comes to my mind is that it's like jumping into an entirely new culture, language. At that point, did you know any English?
so like a neighbor or two. That was about it. We sold produce at our farm because I grew up on a farm, and so we sold produce in the summertime, and so we would have non-Amish people come to buy stuff. And we had quite a few, like, with a farm, you also sell eggs and different things like that. So we had people who came for that. That was like literally it was like them coming to us. I think I could maybe one time that I was inside a non-Amish home, maybe twice, but it was very rare within the 17 years.
Wow. And so it
So
makes me think of like, as you know, this little white girl that grew up in California, like if I were to just jump and just be in Japan and just be like, okay, now I have no money, I have nothing, and I have to figure out how to live in this entirely new culture that I've never experienced, that I have nothing. It's just entirely foreign. And that sounds so scary. And like the courage that it must have taken for you to do that is
yeah,
astonishing.
sometimes I look back and I'm like, how did I do that? But then again, I can answer that because I know the answer to that. It was the situation at home drove me to, if I leave and I don't survive, I would rather have that than stay here. That's how that's how desperate I was to get out, and I had just convinced myself that I had to leave the Amish culture entirely in order to escape the abuse that I was going through. And I wanted to find myself. I wanted to figure out why I do the things that I do or why I had suicidal ideations. I didn't know why, and I didn't know it wasn't normal, but it didn't feel right. And so I sought to find answers to that. And I had convinced myself I wouldn't find the answers unless I leave the Amish uh, culture entirely.
That's amazing. Okay, so then let's hear the rest of this. How does that go? What did that look like?
So, what did it look like leaving the Amish? I actually, how I left, it was early morning on a cold February. I grew up in Michigan, so it was really cold. But I pretty much had the clothes on my back and a ticket to Minnesota, all the way from Michigan to Minnesota, a bus ticket. And I got someone to take me to the bus station, and I bought a ticket that I didn't know how to read, and I got on a bus that I didn't know where it was going, and I had to transfer buses, I think at least 4 times. And I solely relied on the bus driver telling me when to get off and what other bus to get on. The second I got off a bus, I would be like asking people, showing them my ticket. Which bus do I go on? Because I had never read a bus ticket in my life. I didn't know what it meant, like what it was saying or how to know where it was telling me to go next. And then on top of that, I was actually, because of the winters in Chicago, I had to stay at the Chicago bus depot overnight because of the snow they were having at the time. So on top of not knowing how to read a ticket, I ended up having the bus is canceled, and so I had to reschedule and wait until the next morning to get on a bus again.
Wow. Did you find anybody who could speak this Pennsylvania Dutch who could help you, or was it really just
Um,
signs.
By that time I knew enough English where I could, because you learn English when you go to school, so I knew enough to uh tell people and communicate with people in order to know where I was going. I just
Okay, good.
had a much heavier accent than I do now, even though I still have somewhat of an accent. Um, I tried really hard to get rid of that when I left because I was also made fun of it for a lot for it. So,
Well, I'm sorry because I think it's beautiful.
oh, thank you. Yeah, it was just not something I was like, I wanted to disassociate myself from the Amish. I didn't want people to know I came from that because in my mind they were gonna look down on me if they knew about it. And I wanted a brand new life and I wanted to figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you made it to Minnesota, which is
hmm
also freezing cold, especially in
hmm
February. And
Yep.
how did you find a place to live and
So at the
yeah.
time, I convinced my sister to convince her roommate to let me stay on the couch where she was staying. They didn't have an extra bedroom, and I didn't have the money to pay, so I was completely okay with just sleeping on their couch until I found another place. And they agreed to that because her roommate, the people who owned the house, they were, she was actually ex-Amish as well. Her husband wasn't, but she was. And so they understand. It's kind of when you leave, you try to find other ex-Amish who have been there, done that, and are willing to help out because they
Yeah,
understand it.
absolutely. Because what a difficult transition to just be like, okay, I have nothing, you know?
hmm It was a really big culture shock for sure. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I'm glad I did it because the life I live now, I mean, it was all worth it.
That's amazing. So what did you do? I mean, did you went and got a job? Did you and then you found a place to live? Like
Yeah.
how did you do those things?
Yeah, my very first job was working as a waitress at Culver's. So minimum wage, but I was making money for the first time, and I was an adult that got to pay her own bills and had the sheer joy of seeing her paycheck being taken away for all the bills she had to pay.
Yay. But
um,
there's definitely sunshine in like making your
oh
own
yeah,
money and being
oh
like, I
yes.
earned this, like and like how much like that had to have built your self-esteem up from where it was, which was pretty much rock bottom.
Absolutely, yeah. It was like the way I looked at it was when you hit rock bottom, where are you gonna go? You have no way but up. And that's kind of where I was. So I found things to help me, as you said, like build self esteem. I mean, customers saying, "Oh, you have such a beautiful smile and you're always so happy and joyful." I hadn't heard that ever in my life that I remembered. And so that definitely encouraged me. I was like, wow, maybe I have a place here. And it just kind of let from there. And then I got a different job. And then eventually I went self employed. And now I do life coaching. I'm an author, and
Yeah, you wrote
entrepreneur.
your book. Tell us about your book.
So the book is, I gave you in summary of what my book is about, really. But it goes far more into detail what it was like growing up as a little Amish girl who was lost, broken, felt defeated. Um, I'm trying to get away from the word I was broken because like I wasn't broken, I was feeling broken, if you will.
Which is
There were a lot of
important. I
different
mean, feeling
oh
broken is something a lot of people can relate to,
yeah.
feeling like you don't belong and feeling like you're not enough. And it's a difficult, thing to work your way through, and you did it. And so that's why your story is
Right.
so inspiring, is because everyone's going,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I feel broken too. How do I get to the other side of that?
Well, I just like I felt like I was never enough. And I think part of that came from I was thoroughly convinced my parents wanted me to be a boy because I had three older siblings who were all girls. And my parents had just bought a farm before, like, I think my mom was like 4 months pregnant with me. And they bought a farm. And I was thoroughly convinced they thought I was going to be a boy. So here I come, disappointing everybody by my gender. And then, uh, living my entire life trying to make up for that and thinking if I just act more like a boy, my daddy's going to accept me. Like that, there
Oh,
was a lot of drive behind that. And I never asked them if that was true, that they thought I was going to be a boy, anything like that. I'm saying that's how I felt. Yeah.
Oh, that's so, so tough. And you know what? It's another one of those things that like totally goes along with what a lot of other people have experienced. So it's like even though you had this very unique upbringing, there's a lot of those deep emotions that so many people are struggling with.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
What,
I 100% agree.
so what's your book called and where can we find it?
My book is called Beyond the Brokenness, The Adventurous Heart of an Amish Girl, and it's available on Amazon right now. Yeah, I mean, you can find it on Amazon or you can contact me directly and I will get you a signed copy. Amazon does not get you a signed copy. And I'd be more than happy to do that. And then I'm sure you'll plug in a link or something that you can go to my website and you'll find a way to contact me directly and I can send you a book as well. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, I do have a weird question that just occurred to me. Um, was your name Rebekah Hope originally, or did you change your last name to Hope? Because I love it.
So I got married.
Okay.
I was actually my maiden name. I'm a Troyer, so I was my dad is a Troyer. That's what I was. And then when I got married, I actually got a different last name, but Hope is my middle name. So I go by Rebekah Hope as an author, just because my last name is very complicated and confusing for a lot of people. So
Well,
it's much
I
easier
love
to just
it.
go. Thank you. Yeah, so I just go by first the middle name as an author. Yes. So Hope is
I
my middle
love
name.
it. I think that having the word hope in your name is just it just tells everyone exactly what you're all about and how you're helping other people find hope as well. So, how did you go from these these little jobs as you kind of built yourself up into becoming an author and a life coach and a speaker? How did that kind of happen? Because I think there's a lot of people out there who are going, I didn't even have any of the difficult things that you do, and I still don't know how to get there.
Yeah. If I could summarize it into one sentence, I would say it wasn't me, it was Jesus. I couldn't have done any of this if it wouldn't have been for him. And I can't sit here and not give him all the credit because it's not my story, it's his, and he continues to write it and I continue to share it because that's what I'm called to do. Um,
I
but
love
then
it. I
to
love it so much. Just yeah, I
yeah,
love it.
like that's the summary of it. If you were to ask me and I were to summarize it, that's what I would say. And then just kind of like what that journey looked like. You just have to really, really know what you want and not stop at anything until you have it. But your want has to serve more than just you. So if you want the right thing and you don't stop until you get it, you will serve so many people in the process, but then you will also feel very fulfilled because it's what you're called to do. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes so much sense, and that's just so beautiful. Okay, so I have another, I don't know, weird in-depth question because I know very, very little about
With my
Amish.
background, there are no weird questions, trust me.
Okay, were you raised in a Christian culture, or was that something you found when you left the Amish culture? So I don't know if Amish are
Yeah.
Christian or not.
Well, I used to wonder actually because if you ask them, I think they would say they're Christian, but what they say, if you ask them directly, they'll say we're Amish. Kind of like people say they're Catholic or they're Muslim or they're Jewish.
Okay.
Like
So
they're
so to
Amish.
clarify, it's like, do they believe in Jesus Christ? Do you know, study from the Bible and that kind of thing?
So we grew up with the Bible, but it was in a dialect that we did not understand fully
Ah, so somebody else
because
was teaching you what it said,
yeah, like you were
basically.
kind of reliant on the bishop to tell you what to do because there were so many things that you didn't quite understand. And the people who are starting to read the Bible in English, where they actually understand it, are also the people who are getting saved. people who are accepting Jesus. And there is a big revival going on right now, along with a lot of just conflict, because those who are choosing to stay the way they were raised are saying that those who are being saved are, they're bad, like they're going to hell, they're causing disruption, and they're veering away from the ways of their forefathers, which the Amish strongly believe you need to stay with the ways that your forefathers raised you. So
Okay, so
yeah.
you had somewhat of a basis, and then you learned more
Yes.
as you left and kind of met the rest of the world.
Yeah, actually, so one of the first Sundays after I left, my roommate at the time, the one that offered me a place to stay, she asked me if I want to go with her to church, and I was like, sure, yeah. Because somehow I actually believed that there was something more than the Amish in regards to religion. And I thought maybe if I go to a different church, that will answer some questions for me. Well, lo and behold, I got saved because God spoke to me, and the Holy Spirit just overwhelmed me, and I just knew it was the right thing to do. And kind of, I mean, I don't know how else to say except the rest is history. Like, yes, there are ups and downs and there are ins and outs, but ultimately Jesus became my best friend, and to this day he's the only best friend I've ever had. And I can truly
Oh,
and honestly say that. Like, he is the best friend who is never going to leave you, the best friend who's never going to stab you in your back, the best friend who is always there and always ready, always available. In fact, he's so close that you don't even have to talk out loud for him to hear you. That's
I
what he
love
means
it.
to me.
I
Yes.
love it. It's when you have that rock of your foundation that you're built on, it doesn't matter what else comes, you can stay firm. And that's honestly for me, that's what Seeking Sunshine is all about. The sunshine is Jesus. The sunshine is
I love
there,
that so much.
and so as we seek sunshine, it's constantly looking for the Lord's hand in our life and those miracles that he's putting in. And I was just teaching my kids this morning. I was like, how do you tell if you have miracles in your life? It's a choice of whether or not to see them. It's a
Yes.
choice of choosing to see things that you can't explain as gifts from God.
Yeah. And speaking of miracles, every single person who is living and breathing is a living, breathing miracle. And that is just undoubted. If you know where you come from, you will know it's a miracle you are on this earth. And it's a miracle that you're living and breathing, because God is the God of giving and taking. He can take your breath as fast as he gave it to you, and without it, you will not be alive. It's very powerful to me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm totally right there with you. And I've seen it myself. I have 3 kids with autism, and 2 of them have almost died at different times in their lives. And so I've seen how that, like, it's just been miraculous. I mean, my youngest almost died at birth, and then my husband was able to give him a priesthood blessing, and he is miraculous. Like, he came back. Like, it was like just this really, so yeah, I've seen that. I've
Yeah.
seen so many miracles, and I love your story because it really is miraculous that you had the courage, and you had the, I don't know, just the deep seated knowledge that there was more for
Yeah.
you, that God
Oh yeah.
actually did love you, and he actually did want you here on earth to make a difference, and that you
Absolutely.
couldn't do that in your Amish community.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't know if I want to say like I couldn't, but I had convinced myself I couldn't. And to this day, I don't believe I would have had the connections that I needed in order to make that happen if
Well,
I
and
would have stayed.
you didn't have the self-confidence. Like, that's why
Right.
you
Oh
couldn't,
goodness,
was
I had no
because it
confidence
was
at all.
constantly, I mean, when you're constantly being abused and being told, or it feels like you're being told you're nothing all the time, it's not
Yeah,
because of the Amish, it's because of that environment, that it was
absolutely.
like a cage, and you can't, fly if you're in a cage. And so you had to get out of the cage, not because Amish are bad, but because of the circumstances you were particularly in.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Like, I literally, and I've used this analogy, the exact analogy before. I felt like I was a bird in a cage. And then when I left, it was the equivalent of that cage being opened, and suddenly I was allowed to fly wherever I wanted. The only problem was I didn't know how to fly. I was meant for it my entire life, but because I was in this cage for 17 years, I I didn't have the means to. I didn't know how to. So I had to just flap around until my wings
So
soared.
you built those muscles up, and that's an amazing
Yes.
analogy of I didn't know how to fly. And so that's what you're here doing is you're teaching people how to fly.
Yes.
I love
Yeah,
it.
the biggest thing that I do with my coaching is your relationship with yourself is first and foremost, because if that isn't right, guess what? Any relationship you have with anyone else, you're going to find something wrong with it. And so I'm very adamant on helping people build self-confidence and just having that relationship with themselves right. Like, you can't hate yourself and love someone else. It just doesn't work. You can only give what you have. So if I can help you and teach you how you can love yourself, guess what? You by default will love others because it's no longer something you're trying to do, it's who you are. And once it's who you are, that's all you're going to want to do because it aligns. See, when people try to do something they are not, that's where there's conflict in their brain and they're going, I have to do this, but I don't want to do it because it's not who I am. I don't stand for it, but I'm forced to. And it's just, it causes that love hate relationship with yourself because you know you're not that person. But if you do it often enough, suddenly you become that person and you convince yourself that's all you are.
It causes cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. See, you have the word for it. I don't. I'm not that smart.
Oh, I only learned it from my husband, who's brilliant. Yeah, cognitive dissonance is when you've got two conflicting ideas in your head and you really struggle to because they just don't match up. And so if
Yeah.
you are not following, if you're doing something that doesn't feel right, then it's dissonant and it doesn't go together because you're like, wait a minute, this isn't it, but yet I'm making myself do it because I feel like this is what everyone else around me is telling me I have to do. This is what I'm supposed to do, but it's not me. It doesn't fit.
Yeah, and the first example that was ever used, or analogy that was ever used for me to understand that was, the father who had a conversation with his son about the two birds, one on each shoulder, and the son goes, well, which one is going to soar? The one that you're going to feed.
I've
If
always
you
heard it
don't,
as two wolves. And so when you started, I was like, oh, the two wolves. And then you said birds, and I was like, that's so interesting.
yeah, because like you have a bird on each shoulder, and which one is going to gravitate towards you more? The one that you feed and pay attention. If you don't feed and pay attention to the bird, it'll eventually fly away and find somewhere else to be.
So have you heard the wolf one? It's the same. It's just
I don't think I have. I was surprised when you said wolf.
Yeah, okay, so there's this here's how I've heard it 1,000 times is there's this old Native American story where there's two wolves battling inside you. And which
yes,
wolf
I have heard
yes,
that one.
and the son says, which one wins, Dad? And he says, the one you feed. But in that case, it's a battle. And in yours, it's which one flies. And I love being able to look at both of those because maybe it doesn't have to be a battle. Maybe it's just like feeding what is beautiful and feeding what you want to soar. It's a much less
right. And
angry
something I think the reason that I never gravitated towards the wolf one was because that to me was God and Satan fighting for you. But God and Satan can't coexist. So they're not both battling inside you. They're both battling. They both want you. But which one are you going to feed more of? Are you going to feed off of Satan's lies, the bird over here? Or are you going to feed off of God and his living word so you can live and breathe and be a human? That, like, two different, it's all about perspective.
It is. It is.
Some people, they get the wolf thing.
Yeah,
so
but I really love your bird one. It's the same idea, but it's elevated. I really love it.
Yeah.
So tell us about how can we find you on the internet? How can we find your life coaching business? How can we find you in all these places?
Well, you can always find me on social media under Rebekah Hope, or you can find me on my website, RebekahHope.org. Those are the two easiest ways to find me. I believe I have it on my social media as well, where you can email me, but that's certainly on my website email, and you can even send me a letter in the mail if you want. I have an address on there that you can send a letter to me, however you prefer to reach out. I have various ways of doing that.
That's awesome. And I had to say, I don't think I know anyone who is like, oh, you could send me a letter, but knowing your background, if anyone were to hear about you like in the Amish community, I imagine that the letter writing would be the easiest way for them to access you.
Yeah, that's actually it has to be my background because I'm just like that was one of the first things I was like I have to establish a PO box in order for people to reach me. And surprisingly, I get quite a few letters and they are from the Amish. So that, that's their preferred way of communicating with people. So that's why I felt like I really needed to establish that. And it was just kind of, I don't know, there's nothing like a physical letter in your hand, even though I do newsletters and I send them to emails and that stuff. But
And that's beautiful. It's
mhm.
beautiful to have that perspective, which I know that like there was a lot that went on then, but like to appreciate those really basic fundamental things that the rest of the world kind of does without. So as we wrap up, tell us how you were able to, seek sunshine through this whole journey.
So honestly, I think it will go all the way back to when I was 5 years old. My mom, despite our relationship, the one thing that she did was plant that seed that has forever been watered since then. And what she said is just ask Jesus into your heart and he will help you. And I don't even remember what question I asked her, but that was so profound for me because after like ever since then I always found I would look for a way where I could pray by myself, whether that was a dark closet or somewhere in the barn or something. Growing up I would find ways that I would pray to Jesus because mom said that a 5-year-old doesn't quite get the understanding of how somebody can come into your body and live in your heart, like because or I didn't anyway, because I didn't have that perception yet. But I knew there was something to it. And I did. I asked Jesus into my heart, and I undoubtedly believe that that was where my journey began of I am able to find, regardless of where I go, I'm going to be able to find Jesus and he's going to help me in my darkest hour. And when I was 17 years old, soon after I left the Amish, I got saved and I gave my life to Christ, and that was a whole new level. But through all of that, in between, it was always that there's something more to life. I truly, truly believe there was something more to life. And uh, when I didn't know what that was and I desperately needed it, I would just always ask God. I was like, what is it? What more is there? I want it because this this isn't working. This life sucks. I need a different way for me to continue being on this earth and do what I truly and genuinely feel like I'm called to do. I need to hear from you. And it would just never fail. Like I would always get what I needed. Like he was, as I said, my best friend. I could always go to him. It didn't matter how much I rejected him, how much I heard him, how much I walked away for months and didn't talk to him. He wasn't offended. He wasn't like, oh, I haven't heard from you, like he is always there. And he is always there to give you exactly what you need. Might not always be what you want or what you think you need, but it is what you need. And you will see it sooner or later that it was exactly what you needed. And that, to me, it was just making my relationship with God the most important. I cannot put it any other way. That was how I found that sunshine.
I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so, so much. for everything that you've shared today. This has been such a beautiful conversation, and like your story is so inspirational. And I love that you're using everything that you went through to help so many people.
Thank you. Yeah, it was such a pleasure being on here. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. And if I
Absolutely.
can just say one thing to anybody who is listening, regardless of where you are, please, please look inside and see what can you do with what you have from where you are. And when you do that, you will be astounded by the things you actually have the power to do. And in doing that, you will sooner or later find your way out because that's where the power lies. If you want power, that's where it is. Don't go out in the world seeking for it. Don't go wherever. It is right there in your home, in your heart. It's right there.
Oh, it's amazing. So, so great. Thank you again so much for coming on. We'll make sure we put all your links in the show notes so ever can reach out to you and write you letters.
I love letters. I would
Yay, letters
love
are
letters.
amazing. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day.
Hey, thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my goodness, that was so amazing. Thank you so much, Rebekah, for coming on. I find her story so inspiring, and I feel like it doesn't even matter that like I haven't had the same traumas and experiences that she's had. I feel like I can relate to her story so much. So here are my very favorite takeaways. Number 1, when you hit rock bottom, where are you going to go? You have no way to go but up. I love it so much. And number 2, if I could summarize it into one sentence, I would say, it wasn't me, it was Jesus. I couldn't have done any of this if it wouldn't have been for him. I can't sit here and not give him all the credit because it's not my story, it's his. And he continues to write, and I continue to share it because that's what I'm called to do. Oh my goodness, this one, I feel like I could have just said this myself because that's exactly how I feel about my story. Number 3, you just have to really know what you want and not stop at anything until you have it. But your want has to serve more than just you. So if you want the right thing and you don't stop until you get it, you will serve so many people in the process. And then you will feel very fulfilled because it's what you're called to do. Number 4, every single person who is living and breathing is a miracle. That is just undoubted. If you know where you come from, you will know it is a miracle that you are on this earth. Number 5, when I was 5, my mom planted the seed. What she said is just ask Jesus into your heart and he will help you. Number 6, regardless of where I go, I am going to be able to find Jesus and he's going to help me in my darkest hour. And number 7, look inside and see what you can do with what you have from where you are. And when you do that, you will be astounded by the things you actually have the power to do. And in doing that, you will sooner or later find your way out because that's where the power lies. If you want power, that's where it is. Don't go out in the world seeking for it. It is right there in your heart. I love it so much. I have loved every word from Rebekah. I found everything she said so inspiring, and I hope that you did too. And if you loved her words as much as I did, I hope that you'll share this with a friend or share it on social media because I just found her story to be so incredibly inspiring. So you can find more from Rebekah at RebekahHope.org, and the link is in the show notes. And you can also find in the show notes that P.O. box if you want to send her a letter, which is such a beautiful and incredible thing to do. So if you feel called to do that, definitely reach out and do that. It is such an amazing, offer that she gives to us to write a letter because that's not something that we get to do very often these days. So I hope that you are enjoying the beauty of the world around you as we enter into summer, as we get closer to the end of May, and I hope that you are finding sunshine no matter what's happening around you, because I know that it's always really easy to see something that's going wrong around us, but I challenge you today to find something that's going right. Find the sunshine in your day, even if, like me, you are homesick with your husband and daughter. Find something beautiful in your day, because I know that there is something beautiful happening for you. It's there. It's in your day. You just have to look for it. And maybe you have to dig a little bit to find it, but there's something incredible that's happening for you in your life right now. Because you're beautiful and you're amazing, and you deserve to have all the beauty, but you have to look for it sometimes. So I hope you have an amazing day, and I'm going to leave you with a song from my album, and I guess I'll leave you with a little reminder that my album is coming out in 1 week, and I'm super duper excited for it, and I hope that you will go pre-order it at KaraleigHgarrison.com. Have an amazing day, guys. Bye.
Dear God, I come before thee again. I'm worried that it bothers you. I have the same request. Father, we still need money. Father, please grant me